Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today we are going to be learning about NextJS authentication with Prisma and database sessions. We'll be using NextAuth, that's a package for NextJS authentication. We'll be creating a Prisma client extension to query the database for the current user based on the current user's session. Let's dive in. First things first, just want to show you the UI. This is the application that we're going to be building. And as you can see, we've got a home, a me, and a protected navigation. We've got a sign in button, and currently we're not signed in. We click me, we're not signed in. We click protected, we have access denied. And so let's start by signing in. If I just enter my email address here, and then I check my email, I have a magic link. If I just copy this link from the email I received, click here, and you're authenticated. And now if I click me, we are signed in. If I click protected, we can see here, this is now accessible. And if I sign out, there we go, I'm signed out. Click me, not signed in, protected, access denied. So we're going to be building this, and it's pretty simple, but I think just with these three tools, NextAuth, NextJS, and Prisma, we can do a lot. So let's get started. First things first, we're going to open the terminal, run npx create next app. We're just going to call it my app. We are going to use TypeScript, ESLint, Tailwind. We're not going to have a source directory. We're using the app browser, and we will create a custom import alias for ext/. That just means we can use this to access any of the directories in the code base using that path. Okay, so we've installed the next app. Now we're just going to open it by running code my app. We're going to start by removing yarn, and we do that by running this command. We're going to install everything with bun. Okay, now that we've installed everything with bun, let's just delete the public folder and the file icon. We don't need that. Let's start by updating the page and layout in Next.js. This is provided by the create next app command. We just want to get rid of all of this. For now, we are going to go into the layout, and we can put our main tag here, main. Okay, so let's start by installing some of the necessary packages. So there's quite a few that we need to install. Let's do bun add Prisma adapter, NextAuth, Prisma, Prisma client, CLSX, class variants authority, node mailer, and I think that's it. Now we can update the app and layout. Let's just start by adding CLSX here, and we want to make this. Now let's just add some text content to this page. Hello, this is my app. Run bun dev. There we go. We've got our app. Okay, so the next step is to create our database, and you can do that using a PSQL command. So you have to have PSQL installed on your computer before you can do this, but the command is create_db, and you can just type in any name, and I've already done this for a Postgres database, which is what we'll be using for this video. And you create the database. As you can see, I've already created it. That will create the database. You probably need to go in there and run some commands such as grant all privileges on schema public to root and alter schema public owner to root, and that is just to allow the public schema to be accessible by the root user, which is who we have created in this PSQL environment. If I just exit this, as I've already done that, we'll clear our terminal, and so now we have a database. So the next step is going to be to create a Prisma schema. Let's create that. Prisma schema.prisma. Now we need to start by creating our client. So we do generator client provider equals Prisma client JS, data source DB Postgresql. Perfect. Now we need to create our user, and GitHub Copilot has kindly done that for us. We will just take what it has there. We also need to create a session. Let's see what it's got. Excellent. And we also need to create a verification token. Let's just update this because we do not have posts, and instead we can call that sessions. And I generally like to make everything lowercase, so we can just do this, create that in the database. I just prefer this. And if we do map to users, we can remove this name. Now let's do the same for our sessions. We do map created app, map updated app. We should also add a token here, and that needs to be unique. Cool, I think we are pretty much there with our Prisma schema, other than mapping this to user ID, mapping this. Now what we will need to do is run fun prisma db push, and that brings us to our next configuration we need to set up. So we're going to create a .env.local file, and this is where we're going to store our environment variables. I actually have these environment variables, so I'm going to go and take them from somewhere. Okay, so we have our database URL, our NextAuth secret, and our email server email from. I'm going to get these from my other environment. You're going to have to create these yourselves, which is effectively using an email service provider to create a URL that allows you to use that as a server that sends emails. So generally with the email service provider, you will have like a URL that begins with SMTP. I use resend, but that is another topic that we'll cover in another video. So now if we run source.env.local fun prisma db push, there we go. You can see that has pushed our schema to the database. So if we take a look, this is the database we created. We've got the root, the password, and that's just a local user that we've created on the database. The port for Postgres is 5432. That is localhost, and let's just test this connection. Okay, it looks like we have not made our verification token mapped, so let's do that quickly. And if we run prisma db push, refresh, and there we go. That just looks much neater. Now that we've created our schema, we need to create our client. And we'll do that by creating a lib directory, a new file called db.ts. We start here by importing Prisma client. We do const Prisma equals new Prisma client, const global for Prisma equals global unknown as Prisma client. Then we'll do export const db equals global.forPrisma or Prisma, and that's just the way that we have to set this up based on the Prisma documentation. And then if we do if process.env does not equal production, then we set the global for Prisma to Prisma. Now that we have our Prisma set up, we can now access the DB variable throughout our application in order to query the database. So the next step is to create our NextAuth configuration. And what we want to do is we want to create a new file called auth.ts. And this is going to export const options equals, and we want this to satisfies options. Cool, so that basically says it doesn't satisfy what is required in the options, which is a nice little way to get some type safety. We'll start by adding our providers, and we want to use the email provider. And this is where our server comes in. So as you can see, it's auto-populating, and we just want to delete this because we are using process.env.email server. That allows us to send emails. And this is the from address, which we send emails from. The reason we need this is so that we can access our magic link when we sign in. Next, we will create our secret, which we added to our environment variables. And then we'll add our adapter for Prisma. We want to put in our recently created DB like that. As you can see, we're exporting our DB and we're putting it into the Prisma adapter. Now we're going to use session, and we do not want JWT. We instead want to use strategy database, and the max age can be 30 days. We want to build custom pages for our sign-in form and for our verification requests, because out of the box, NextAuth gives you some basic ones, but they're, not very unique, and they're also off the page that we want to keep them on. So let's create pages, sign in, and verify request. These pages are actually created by NextAuth, and we override them by adding them here. Now we want to actually create some callbacks. Callback for us, but we'll just do async session. We want to get the user from the session, and then we want to return the user. We also need to get the session. We want to do session.user equals user. Now, why is this shouting at us? We have to add email verified, and that is going to be a date, time, and we want it to be optional. We also need to add a session token. We can map that. So why is this happening? Let's have a look. I found out why our session is doing this, and that is because we were returning the user, and we want to return session. Now we've got our callback. It assigns the adapter user to our session, and then we want to add our events. We want to have a sign-in event. We can just log something here, user signed in. Okay, I'm happy with that. So our next step is to add a new folder in here called API. And within that, we add auth. Within that, we add NextAuth. NextAuth. Then we create what's called a route handler in Next.js. In this route handler, we are going to import NextAuth, import our options, and we're going to const handler equals NextAuth. Pass in our options. We're going to export handler as get, handler as post. So I think we've set everything up now from the authentication and the Prisma side. Next step is to create some components, some React components. So back to our page, let's start creating some components. We'll go into our layout. What we want to do is we want to add a header component. So we're going to create a new folder called components. We're going to create a header tsx. Make this use client because we're going to be doing some signing out from the header. And to do that, we need to use NextAuth's sign out method that they export. And those can only be used on the client side. Import link. Next link, import sign in, sign out, use session, React. We'll import the use router from Next Navigation. So export default function header will return a header element. This is the header. Let's just check if this works. Let's run def. Great, it's there. Now what we want to do is we want to get the session from there and const router equals use router. And actually we want to export the status from here. We want to do const loading equals loading. Okay, so we've got our session, which is either going to be session or null, got our router for navigation, and we've got our loading state. The next step is to create a provider, and what provider does is it allows you to access the session from the use session hook that NextAuth provides. Provider is going to wrap part of our application, and what we're going to do is we're going to just get it to wrap the header. Let's get started creating the provider. So provider.tsx, export default function provider. We're just going to return the children, react.props with children, client as a wrapper for the header provider. Now we want to get the session from the server. We do const session equals get server session, make this async, export default async function, and we want to await this as this returns a promise, and we can pass in the session here. And so we'll need to accept the session as well. So interface provider props extends. We want the session to be session from NextAuth or null. And then what we need to do, we need to do session provider, session equals session. Cool, so that keeps our provider wrapping the header and giving it access to this use session hook as well as the sign in and sign out methods as they are not accessible on the server. So let's continue with our header. We want to create some navigation links. We've got our navigation here for home, me, protected, and we have our sign in and sign out buttons, and we're using sign out method here and then pushing. We have not signed in, and if there is a session, we're authenticated. Get rid of all this. There we go. And we can have loading BG gray. The next step is to create our sign-in component. We still need to create these pages. We can do that by creating signin.tsx. So we'll begin by making this a use client. We'll export default function, sign in, return. Now we're going to create some reusable components at label and input. Just create a label.tsx and an input. I already have these, so I'll just get them. And as you can see, we're missing a package. So fun, React label. Excellent. So now we can use them in our sign-in component. We'll start by importing the label and the input, and we'll also import sign-in from NextAuth React. We also need to import use state. So let's get started building our sign-in component by adding this. We want to have a loading false, and then we want to create a form. Inside that form, we'll have a div, a label, and the label have HTML4 equals email, input ID equals email, name equals email, placeholder type equals email, on change needs to be wrapped in set email. Let's add some styles. Class name equals space y4 w 96. We should also add on submit equals, we can create a function handle submit, const handle submit, set loading, sign in. Why is this shouting at me? Passing generics to a type. Form event, we can also just change this to me. Now we need to just create a submit button. Button disabled equals loading, send me a magic link. And I'll just add type equals submit and some styles. This leads nicely to creating a page for sign-in. So if we do new page, sign in page.tsx, move this into the auth folder, auth, sign in, just add the sign in component. There we go. Now we should be able to see that in the UI. We go to sign in. There we go. It's looking good. Next, we need to add a verify request page, which will look like this. As you can see, the page names here actually directly map to the pages we have here. We're effectively overwriting them, and let's have a look how that looks. Nice. So that is our custom verify request page. Now we're going to create our access denied component and access denied TSX. And we've created this access denied component. And what we can do is we can add a page called protected. Protected will be a page.tsx. So this route protected is going to be our page that you have to be signed in order to access. And so we will import the access denied, const protected equals async, and we are going to return the access denied component. However, that does not make our component secure just yet. So to make this component secure, const session equals await get server side session. We pass in our options, and then we need to return access denied if no session, return access denied. Otherwise, we return the user, and we can export default protected. Now, all of this code is going to be available to you in the GitHub link that I post down below, so please feel free to check it out. Let's take a look. Protected, access denied. You must be signed in to view this page. Now we need to create the me page. So let's just do me and page.tsx. Const me equals async export default. Let's just call it me page. Let's take a look. And so what we want to do here is we want to use the Prisma client extension to get the current session. So let's start by doing const user equals, and we're going to create this db.current.user function using Prisma client extensions. So let's get into that. We need to go to our lib. We can add a new folder, extensions. Let's do current user.ts. We need to import the options from auth because we need to get the session. We need to import Prisma from Prisma client, and we need to import the server session from NextAuth. Now this is how we create a Prisma client extension. Let's start by exporting a function called current user, and then we want to return Prisma.define extension, and then we want to get the client and return from the client client.extends open brackets, and we want to access the model. The model we want to access is user, and we want to async current user, and there we go. As you can see, we've been helped out here by GitHub Copilot. However, it is wrong. We need to if no session.user.email, then we return null because the user doesn't have an email, and that's how we're getting them to authenticate. And we just need to return the user, and it's as simple as that. Now we've created a current user extension, and what we can do now is we can use this name here. However, let's just call it current. We can now export this into our Prisma client. So we need to pass in the options here. So there we go. We need to update this a little bit to get it to work. So let's do .extends, and we import current user. We call that function there. As you can see, it's shouting at us, so we need to basically change this to type of Prisma. So we're getting a blue squiggly here, but I think it's fine. That is from the total TypeScript package. In our Auth.js, we have to also ask Prisma client. Auth.js does not like us using the extends because it doesn't have compatibility. However, this will work. Let's test this out. We go back to our me page. We want to await db.current.user. Sorry, db.user.current. As you can see, that is now a new function and it gets us the user. So we've got our user. We can say if no user, redirect to, let's just say, sign in. And if there is a user, let's say signed in as user.email. Okay, so I found something out, and that is we are not passing in the options into here, and we need to add the sign out here. We need to keep that here. So back to checking our me query. Let's have a look. Can we see the user from the get current? When I click on me, I get a promise pending, things to be awaited. Let's try that again. User is null. Okay, so now if I sign in, send me a magic link. So we've signed in and there we go. We've got our user. So we can now say if no user, redirect to auth sign in. And if we go to our sign in page, go to sign in page, we want to do const user equals await db.user.current if user redirect. So we've got sign in page, redirecting them if they're already signed in, and the me page we can say I am signed in as user.email. We don't need to make that optional. Let's have a look. I'm signed in as, there we go. We're getting the user from the database. We are able to access the protected page. We have home. And then if we sign out, we try and access this. It redirects me to sign in. Protector says access denied. And there you have it. So that is the application, and I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up and subscribe, and I look forward to sharing more educational content with you.